EarthBound has a lot of randomness in the game, from enemies spawning, lucky item drops, and the battle system. However, the RNG or random number generator isn't actually random. Sure, it still feels like there is due to the number of possible outcomes the game can produce, but since the game doesn't have an internal clock, true randomness cannot be achieved. The use of time is a common way to produce random numbers in computers. I've personally used it since I'm a computer science major. Here's a very simple program to generate a random number in the C coding language. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what this all actually means, but the program uses the computer's clock in order to output a random number. After running it 3 times, these are the numbers I got. With that out of the way, let's get back to EarthBound. The game has 3 values in memory to deal with RNG. They are 7E0024, 7E0026, and 7E4A7A. They're all hex values, with the first 2 being 1 byte and the last being 2. I'll be referring to these as RNG 1, 2, and 3 to help keep track of them. 1 and 2 affect turn order, item drops, and the battling itself. Whether you miss, hit, or smash, along with the damage and statuses that come with certain attacks. RNG 1 and 2 are basically the same, just different values in memory. There are plenty of them, so the values will jump around constantly while playing in order to keep the game random. So let's take a closer look at RNG 1 and 2 events. The first event is when a character is printed to a text box. By that I mean every single letter, character, and space in a text box will advance it by 1 unit. So if you encounter a long section of dialogue with an NPC, this could jack up the RNG updates by hundreds. This is also important to know when naming characters. Keeping them a single letter or symbol will only increase it by 1 unit, while having something like 5 will begin to add up over time. The next event is NPC movement. Every time a single one starts and stops moving, it increases them by 1 unit. If you have a bunch of NPCs on screen, they could cause it to jump up a bunch. You can also manipulate RNG to have characters move in certain ways, but I'll get back into that later in the video. Next up is cursor movements in a menu. Any menu in the game will advance it by 1 unit, so the file select, naming characters, menu and stores, yours in the overworld, and in battle. The only exception is the PSI menu, which will increment it by 2 each time. While on the topic of menus, opening it with A advances it 1 unit and closing it with B it will advance it 2. If you wait around while the menus open, the character's HP/PP boxes will come up. This will increase them 1 unit every second they're up. Weirdly enough, if you just press B to pull up the HP/PP boxes, it'll advance it 1 every single frame they're open. This is a quick way of making RNG 1 and 2 spike up, but if you're trying to manipulate RNG, then you should never pull these up, as you need frame perfect inputs in order to stay on your desired track. This can be used in tasks, aka tool assisted speedruns though. Shifting away from menus, while in Dusty Dunes or Scaraba Desert, they will advance it by 1 unit every 20 seconds on a global timer as the game is checking to give you sunstroke. Moving on to Bubble Monkey and the Cultist Lady in Happy Happy Village, they will follow you but in a different way than normal. They will stop for brief moments and then catch back up to you. The RNG will update 1 unit when starting and stopping their pause and catch up movements. The final one is when RNG's 16th place changes. This will increment 1 and 2 by 1 unit. But what causes RNG to change? For that, I'm going to head over to my friend BeeSquared to explain.
What's cracking with the honeys? Let's get into this. Sadly, RNG 3 is not as documented due to it being discovered fairly recently, so we know a lot less about this value in memory. Like CWilly mentioned earlier, RNG 3 is a 2-byte hex value at 7E4A7A, and at this point in time, we only know of a few events in the game that consistently update this value. First up is the pixel boundaries around the map. Let me paint a picture for you, okay? Imagine EarthBound as this huge grid of 64 by 64 pixel boxes. Each time ness crosses over into another box, RNG 3 will update 5 to 10 units. If you want to get more specific, when the first pixel on ness crosses the vertical line, or when the top or bottom-most pixel crosses a horizontal line. The purpose of these grids is to help the game check whether to spawn a butterfly or not. But here's the thing. There are some sections of the game when this mechanic is not implemented. One of the earliest examples is in the beginning of the game, when you go to talk to Pokey in the Popo, or at the tail end of the game after defeating Gygus. During these points in the game, enemy spawns are turned off, and the pixel boundaries are not active. These boundaries can also have some inconsistencies too. Crossing these lines normally will usually update it by 5 units. When there are repeating identical spawn plates a certain distance away from an RNG3 line, the game will repeat checking RNG3 1 to 5 extra times, depending on the amount of identical spawn plates. Next up on the list are transitions. When going through a door, RNG3 will advance by 15 units, and falling down a hole will cause it to update by 30 units. Finally, RNG3 advances during some of the stationary cutscenes too. For example, the Runaway 5 shows you can sit down with your buddies and watch. However, in a moving cutscene, RNG3 is turned off. Now back to you!
So why have people looked into the game's RNG so much? Well, in any percent speedruns of EarthBound, you want to beat the game as fast as possible using any glitches and tricks you can. RNG manipulation is a big part of these runs, especially in the beginning of the game. By following a specific set of movements and inputs, runners manipulate the RNG all the way from the time the console's turned on until you fight Starman Jr. They do this because they want to walk back up the meteorite as fast as possible and not encounter any enemies. Then they defeat Starman Jr. in just 4 turns. After this point, you don't have to continue manipulating RNG due to new discoveries in the past few months. Speedrunners used to have to do all of Onet and carry specific RNG values in order to do things like Titanic Ant and the cops as fast as possible. Luckily, thanks to Pirohiko, we can skip pretty much all of Onet now doing a glitch called barrier skip. I'll get into how to perform this in a future video, but let's show you an example of RNG manipulation. So this is probably the most simple way of showing this off, as it's done right in the beginning of the game. I didn't want to get into the entire route because it would take too long, so let's show you how to determine the movement of the first NPC you encounter during the game. An important thing to note about the RNG values in EarthBound is that they reset to the same default numbers every time the console is turned on or reset. Without this, we wouldn't be able to manipulate the RNG at all because the values wouldn't be known. Remember how I mentioned earlier that cursor movements will advance the RNG 1 and 2 by 1 unit? Well, we want to have 20 total cursor movements before pressing yep at the end of naming all your character's pet and other items. You can do these movements while in the menus. You should only move your cursor while in the naming section and not while you're picking the other options like text speed, sound settings, and window flavor. In order to get the settings you prefer without moving the cursor, select the new file game in the first slot and go through these however you want. When you get to the point of naming ness, reset the console. When you select the new game option this time, your cursor will already be on your choices and you can go right into the naming section without any extra movements. Once you're here, you want to name everything and get to the confirmation screen after only moving your cursor 20 times. You can technically name anything whatever you want, but remember that the character count does matter with RNG manipulation, so I'd recommend keeping everything to 1 letter or symbol. These are the choices I did. Once you're happy with your decisions and have only done 20 total cursor movements since the reset, select yep. After the little cutscene, hop out of bed and walk into Tracy's room. Walk directly to the present and press L on it as soon as you can. Immediately after closing the text, equip the cracked bat. You want to do this pretty fast as staying in the menu too long can throw off the RNG values. After exiting the menu, we're finally ready to see the reward for all of our hard work up to this point. Tracy will move down and to the right. Yep, that's it. While it doesn't seem too significant, RNG does determine NPC movements, so speedrunners will check certain NPCs as a way to see if they're carrying RNG correctly. So if Tracy moves down and to the right, they're still on the right track. So that's pretty much all I'm going to show you in terms of manipulating RNG in a speedrun, and that pretty much wraps up this video too. If you would like to take a deeper look into the RNG values yourself, you can use the BizHawk emulator's RAM Watch feature. Enter the 3 RNG values and you can watch them change yourself and see the real numbers for each. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it at least somewhat interesting. I want to first thank AndyPerfect, as he is a big part of the EarthBound speedrunning community and personally helped me with some of the questions I had. If you are interested in the any percent speedrun for this game, check out his commentary on the entire run. He goes into great detail to explain everything you need to know. I also want to thank BeeSquared for featuring in this. He has some EarthBound videos of his own and is overall a great content creator. I'll leave links to a bunch of stuff in the description if you want to take a deeper look into anything I talked about today. But for now, I'm gonna get up out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, see ya!